Great. Good to see everybody. I'm Jonathan Klein. I'm one of the co-founders at Undaunted. If you are looking for a national schools and the Inflation Reduction Act call, you are in the right place. We are a national network of advocates, technical experts in the education sector, professional associations, labor unions, advocates, all working together to level each other up, create tools, coordinate as best we can to help schools make the most of the Inflation Reduction Act resources to promote healthy, sustainable, resilient, cost-effective school infrastructure across the country. Looks like we just dropped the agenda and notes in the call again. For those just joining, please add your organization and name at the top of the agenda. A few norms. We just ask everyone, sometimes these calls get to be a couple screens. We ask folks to just participate with respect, humility, generosity of spirit for others. We're coming in different places, and the goal is to help everybody along their path in helping students in schools. We ask people to default to video and cameras on as much as possible with microphones muted, and then come off mute when you have a comment to make. Of course, it's okay if you need to be camera off for some reason, but if you can be camera on, it just makes for a more engaging experience, we think, for everyone. If we can see each other and see the head nods and the body language. We try to share airtime, so, come off mute, use the raise your hand, use the chat, but, try to make space for everyone to participate. And then we do record these calls so that members of the network, I think the list is over 100 folks now, who can't join, can go back and watch and see this, or new folks can kind of get caught up on some of the conversations that we've had. So that's kind of who we are. I'll just say before we do first-time participants, we really have we think a full agenda today. There's stuff that's new in IRA land. We've got an update sort of on the database and the map project that we've been working on. We're hoping that you will all join us in a fall storytelling push this month around the impact that the IRA is having in schools and the opportunity for schools to leverage IRA. And then we have a guest speaker and an opportunity to start talking a little bit about financing projects and some of the resources beyond elective pay that are starting to come online. So a lot to try to cover today if we can get through it all. So that being said, if you haven't put your name and org at the top of the agenda, please do. And are there any, we usually start with just any first-time callers that want to give a wave and just say who you are for the group.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esmeralda Martin Singh. I'm with the Low Income Investment Fund and Build Up California. Happy to be here for the first time. I believe Angie Garling usually attends these meetings. She asked me to sit in, so I'm happy to join you today. Thank you.
Welcome. Chelsea?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Watson. I'm with the Building Power Resource Center, and I'm really happy to be here today.
Hi, everybody. This is Vicki Kaplan, she, her. I'm calling in on the phone. I'll be on camera shortly. I work at People's Action. We're a national community organizing network with about 40 community-based organizations in 27 states. And we have about a half a dozen organizations that are working on green schools campaigns. So excited to be here for my first time. Folks from People's Action have been here before, but very glad to be here with you all. Thank you.
Welcome, Vicki. Any other first-time callers or participants?
Hi, everybody. Marianne Somm with the American Federation of Teachers.
Good to see you, Marianne. Okay, well, this is a great crowd, and I think I will hand things off to Sarah Ross for what's new in IRA land. Schools in IRA.
What's new in schools in IRA land? Nice to see a bunch of familiar faces, and so thrilled to see some new faces. I'm Sarah Ross. I'm Jonathan's co-founder at Undaunted K-12, and this is a standing agenda item. As you repeat attendees know, we kind of try to cover together what's new in terms of this huge federal policy. And we do it in these 3 buckets of kind of new funding moves, new guidance coming out, and new kind of process pieces. And then I always ask, what did I miss? And there's always something. So be thinking about what I missed that you're going to add on for me. So we talk a lot about the tax credits in this forum, but there's also some grant opportunities, of course, that are important for schools. And want to congratulate USGBC for being an awardee on one of those grant opportunities from EPA, the indoor air pollution at schools. Maybe we'll hear about that work at a future meeting, but just wanted to acknowledge the link here shows some of the other awardees. So you can check that out.
Sarah, I'm here if it matters. Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, and then I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about the community change grants as another bucket of funds and the work that you are doing at USGBC to support with a toolkit districts that want to apply for those dollars. So over to you, Anissa, to talk about that funding stream.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. I'm Anissa Hemming. I'm the director of the Center for Green Schools at the U.S. Green Building Council. Yeah, we got some, we saw the EPA Environmental Justice and Community Change Grants opportunity come through last November, and we started looking at it for ourselves. And then we realized actually this is a great opportunity directly for schools. And so we sought some limited funding to pay for like a grant coaching offering for school districts. And so we secured that funding in April, which did not leave us a ton of time to create stuff, but we hustled and created a toolkit for districts, and then we invited districts to a week-long training series of little lunchtime trainings, and then at the end of that series invited them to sign up for coaching hours. And so we have 8 school district teams that we're working with that our grant writing coaching team is working with, and the school districts are required to partner with a community-based organization to apply for these grants. If you don't know much about the grants it's a huge pot of money. It's $2 billion. The EPA anticipates giving somewhere between 100 and 150 awards of 10 to 20 million each. So it's a pretty huge opportunity. And the type of efforts that it's funding are community-based efforts that are doing both climate action, like emissions reduction, and pollution reduction. So you have to be addressing both of those in a project. So it's a really great fit for school-based work on indoor air quality and building improvements and that sort of thing. So so yeah, that's where we stand. There's a website I'll put in the chat where all of the materials, including the training recordings, are. Obviously it's the deadline is November 21st, so it's not something that you can bring to a district that has no idea what they might do with the money. But if you know of a district that is sort of like primed to do some air quality project and has a pretty good tie to some community-based organizations that might step in, it's possible to put together an application between now and November 21st. It's a complicated application, but if a project is sort of sitting there ready, it's a possibility. So we've put together like annotated outline and a research like library of stats for districts to pop into their application and stuff. So we're trying to make it give schools somewhere to start with their application. So that's what we've got.
Great. And did I miss any? So do you still have capacity to help more districts?
Yes, we have capacity to help a couple more districts if there are ones that you guys know about.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Another pot of grant funding. Natalia, I think I saw you here from WRI. You want to hop off and talk about those dollars?
Yeah, sure. So for those who don't know me, I'm Natalia Kopian. I'm with the World Resources Institute's Electric School Bus Initiative, very long name. So last week, the 4th round of the Clean School Bus Program was announced with nearly $1 billion in available funding, which we're really excited about because usually it's about 500 million that they aim for. Applications are due January 9th, 2025. So in the new year, more or less the same guidance as we've seen in the past. Yeah, Carolina, if you have anything you want to add afterwards, that would be great too. One thing I'll mention just for this group to keep an eye on for other funding opportunities is that there was a restriction that was added in the program guidance this time around on third-party applicants, which are usually OEMs or bus manufacturers, stating that companies that are, and this is the quote, owned, controlled by, or subject to foreign entities of concern, headquartered in foreign entities of concern, or subsidiaries of an entity that is a foreign entity of concern, cannot apply through the program any longer. Or for this upcoming round. This is very little impact on the program as it stands, just because there isn't a huge market for or as it stands right now, not a huge market in that area, but just something to keep an eye out for other programs, as it might kind of creep in as these programs become more politicized. But yeah, that's just a note for others. We'll be updating our website with information in the coming days on the program, but I'll stop, Carolina, if you want to add anything on the program funding.
Thanks, Natalia, and thanks, everyone. I'm Carolina Chacon. I'm the coalition manager for school buses. I just dropped in the chat a toolkit that folks are welcome to use. It includes information about this latest funding round, some differences from last year, key message guidance, suggestions on what folks can do, sample social media, sample media release, sample letter to school district, FAQs, etc. We'll continue to add additional resources, but I do want to highlight a couple things about this that are important. One is that even though they're called rebates, they are upfront funding, and so that gets a lot of folks tripped up. They're also non-competitive, so even though in some cases they get referred to as grants, they're not competitive like grants are. EPA, the Clean School Bus Program, does have grants, but this round, rebates, and again, upfront, so kind of a misnomer. And like Natalia said, EPA is actually offering almost twice what they typically do, and we think that's because they're trying to get as much funding out the door as possible before a potential new administration. And so I also want to point out that out of the $5 billion Clean School Bus Program, they've already distributed $3 billion. This is the $4th billion that they have, and a future administration could claw back any unspent funds. So we want to make sure that we go big, that lots of school districts throughout the country submit applications, that we demonstrate the demand for electric school buses. And lastly, also want to point out that for this round, they're allowing up to 50 school buses, whereas previously it was only 25. So previous rebate rounds were really geared at smaller fleets, and this is actually much bigger. And so it is an opportunity for larger school fleets to apply for a very easy application, not competitive, and it's pretty simple. The EPA has slightly lowered the incentive levels from the previous round, but they're still substantial, and still can cover the cost differential between a diesel and electric school bus. So just want to plug that out there. If you have any additional questions, I know that as well as WRI, the Alliance is always happy to brief other partners, provide materials, answer questions as much as we can. And especially if you have advocates in states that are contacting school districts directly or that want to pair this with state funding, please do reach out. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you,
actually,
Christina.
so there's a question in the chat.
Go for it. You want to pick it off?
Yeah, you absolutely can get direct pay, but you have to essentially, the rebate only applies for a bus that you will purchase after you've been awarded the rebate. So you apply for the Clean School Bus Program, EPA notifies you that you are a recipient of funding, you submit your purchase order. Before you actually pay for the bus, you receive the funding, and then that's your obligation to the Clean School Bus Program. Once the bus is actually delivered, that's when you'd be able to file for the rebate.
For the tax credit.
For the tax credit, my apologies. Be a direct pay, yes. So you can stack both, and EPA has instituted also for this round that the funding that EPA provides and funding secured elsewhere, including the tax credits, can't be more than the cost of a new electric school bus. But the EPA rebate funding could also be used for infrastructure, workforce development, some consulting services, warranty shipping, etc. So there's lots of uses for the rebate funding beyond the bus. So it makes it easier to stack with things like the tax credits via direct pay.
Great. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you for that awesome toolkit. The last thing that on the funding that I neglected to include in our last meeting, so this is me catching up with an omission, is that the GGRF, for those of you who follow the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, a $27 billion pot, awardees for shepherding those dollars into the world were selected back in August. There were 3 different competitions. You can click on the link and we'll talk about more about GGRF with Bennett later on the agenda. So I won't say more on that for now. That's our what's new and funding. Let's turn to guidance, and maybe who wants to pick off? I have Natalia down here, but anyone want to pick off the guidance? Carolina, Natalia, who wants to talk about 30C and give us the rundown on the new guidance that was issued for alternative fuel refueling property, otherwise known as EV charging equipment. Natalia,
I can get us started.
Okay.
With the big caveat that we're still working through it, so there's a ton that I might be missing or haven't, understood just the complexities of it all yet. But I can run through just some of the highlights. So it was a notice of proposed rulemaking that they issued a little over a week ago now, with comments due November 18th. So as people are like working through it, if there's things that you see that might, impact your work area, like let me know and we'll see how we can add it to our comments. I'm gonna drop in the chat if I can find it. Oh, Carolina got it. The press release is very useful. Thank you. So I'll just talk about some of the big pieces. Is the first one that we were waiting for is that they defined a single unit of charging infrastructure using a per port definition. So if a charging unit has multiple ports, they're counting each individual port on a single charger as a individual 30C property. The other piece that I wanted to talk about for this group is that they define what is an eligible project cost or a property under 30C. Because initially we didn't know what they were going to include in the project costs, but they've defined that a little bit more in this proposed rulemaking. So they have it listed as anything that is functionally interdependent components of charging infrastructure, and those things that are also integral to the chargers, as long as they're placed in the same or immediately adjacent address. So think about a single bus depot or a single, parking lot. If it has a physical address, those projects that are installed there are considered 30C projects. In the proposed rulemaking, they have a ton of really helpful examples that kind of delineate what things are included. So I just noted some of them that might be helpful just to visualize this. They've included things obviously like the charger itself, the pedestal that supports the charger, the electric panel, the conduit wiring, the smart charge management systems, as the typical things that you might think of as 30C property that are, you can't have the charger without those things, right? It wouldn't necessarily work, and they're functionally interdependent components. They compared that to things that wouldn't be considered functionally interdependent as improvements to the land where the chargers are installed, permitting fees. They included EV parking only signs as not a part of 30C property. And, like striping on the pavement, that sort of thing are not eligible for the credit. An interesting thing that I think that this group might find important is that they did extend 30C property to include battery energy storage systems. So long as they are obviously on the same or adjacent physical address as the chargers and only used to support the chargers and not provide electricity elsewhere. Those were some of the big points. They kind of kept the census tracts the same. I know there were some folks that are working on that. effort to try to expand it, but they included in the proposed rulemaking that if, others had data sources that they could point to expand eligibility, that they were open to that, but they've more or less kept the eligibility the same. There's definitely still lots to work through. We're trying to work through some sticking points to see if there's some negative consequences to some of the language, but we'll be updating our resources in the coming weeks as well, and I'll be sure to share it with the group.
Awesome. Yes, go ahead.
This is Jacob. I just wanted to point out one interesting item. This is kind of a reading between the lines and the tea leaves. There's a section on there called determination of a project. And you'll know that on the section 48 side, there's the 7 tests to determine if a project is a single project or not.
Yep.
One interesting point they make here. So on section 48, we're at the same stage. We're at proposed regulations. We're waiting for final. They did make a slight adjustment to their wording, and I'll read it. So it's a contiguous piece of land owned by a single taxpayer, but then they added placed in service in a single taxable year, which potentially we're hoping that means that they're going to change that language for section 48. I'm not guaranteeing that they're going to change the language,
right,
but maybe directionally we're seeing that they're going to say a single energy property is only for a single tax year and cannot expand over 2 years. So if you have 2 section 48 projects, one that ends this year, one that ends next year, potentially they might be changing the rules to say that we can keep those as separate projects.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move us quickly through some of the just process tips here. Just again, where we are when it comes to the tax credits. Those of you that follow this area closely know that we're coming up on the first deadline for filing for tax credits. So November 15th of this year is the absolute drop dead final deadline for any folks that want to file for the calendar year 2023. The formula here, right, is it's due 4.5 months after the close of a taxable year. And then in this case, they gave first-time filers an automatic paperless 6-month extension. You didn't have to ask for it, you just got it. So you kind of do that math and you end up at November 15th, 2024 as the final deadline for calendar year 2023 projects. Keep in mind, most schools are on a fiscal year that's not the calendar year. And so if they put property into service, for example, the back half of 2023, their deadline with that automatic 6-month extension isn't until May 15th of next year. So just to orient people around deadlines, but this November 15th one is hard. If they miss it, you kind of say goodbye forever to those tax credits. We're still hearing kind of 45 days, but a little more nuance to that is that that's only for e-filing. And even there, we've heard some anecdotes about some stuff getting hung up. We still don't have any checks yet. We're still waiting. This group will hear when we do. And then just wanted to note there are a bunch of new office hours that the IRS did announce for folks that have questions about either the pre-filing or the filing process. Again, they're not giving you advice, but they can help you navigate the process. And I've heard those have been useful at times. What did I miss? New funding pots.
Sir, just that 45 days is 45 days from the filing deadline, or we discovered that it's 45 days from the filing deadline, not 45 days from when you file.
Yep. Any other pieces that folks want to throw in that I missed in terms of new funding pots for schools through IRA, new guidance coming out, new updates on the process here? Okay, we're going to move on to number 3 then. So last time at this meeting, we showed you all our new database of school IRA projects that Sky will bring up here in a minute and share. We're excited to give you an update on kind of where that project stands. The numbers of projects that we're tracking is just growing quickly and rapidly. Oh, we got some funky stuff going on here. And excited to talk about kind of some partnership on that too. So Sky, let me turn over to you to share the visual on the latest of the database and talk about updates.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Can you all see that okay, my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so since we have all last convened, we've made some updates to the school investments in clean energy map. We now have a map that has over 300 clean energy projects that are all eligible for federal reimbursements. This does not mean they're all filing or they're all complete. They're at different stages from planning to pre-filing to filing. And of those 300 projects, those span a little over 100 districts, and we have confirmation that 8 districts have pre-filed so far and 9 have filed and are awaiting their checks. So new to this map is the map now includes transportation related projects, so things that are eligible for Section 30C and 45W. And if you're unfamiliar with our map, it's interactive, so you can go in and click on any of these dots here to learn a little more about the project and where that project is at. And there's some backup material linked for all of these projects. And if you want to learn even more about projects in particular, you can scroll right below our map. And we have a series of fact sheets, more to come. But these fact sheets go into a little more detail on some of the projects across different districts. And then we have a national fact sheet as well that spans across the country. So these are both really great tools you can share with your network and explore with the link that I sent you. And that's it for me for updates to the map. I'll pass it back to you, Sarah.
Great, thank you. This is Sky's baby. She is shepherding this effort, and we are so grateful that she keeps track of all this data for us. It's a massive undertaking, and we're now doing it gratefully with partners. So as Sky scrolled down there, you probably saw logos of some of our friends on the call here. We are so grateful for the partnership with WRI's Electric School Bus Initiative and Generation 180. Both those organizations supplied data, raw hard data on some of these projects. They're responsible for some of these dots being on the page. We know we can't do this work alone. Just since we launched this, it's gone from 126 projects now over 300 in the span of just a few weeks. So again, it's going to quickly outstrip our team of 5 here. So we know we need to do this with partners, and we're excited to talk with any of you all that want to work with us on contributing project data. We think of that mostly as the nonprofit role. And then we are starting to have preliminary conversations with for-profit entities who we think can help us really shore up the financial sustainability of this effort. We've got a long road ahead of us, right? We've got 10 years of the IRA tax credits. And again, we hope that this will only accumulate with more and more projects. So this is going to be a mammoth effort. So if you're a private sector partner and you want to talk with us about financial sponsorship, we're excited to do that. If you're a partner who has regular interactions with school districts and you can help us source partners and kind of shepherd them through the process, help us keep abreast of how they're moving through the process, we'd love to work with you on this effort. And I think that's what we have on the database. Any quick questions?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I've got a quick question. Thank you. What's the best way to, I don't have like a database to provide, but anecdotally hearing about projects that I don't see on the map. What's the best way? Is that like an email to you, Sarah, or Sky? What's the best way to get that to you?
We'll throw the link in the chat. Maybe Sky can grab it. We have a form that you can fill out. So when you hear about the ad hoc one, that's great. We have a quick form you can fill out. For those of you that have kind of more, and databases maybe fancy, a spreadsheet with multiple projects, and you kind of want to do it that way. That's what WRI and Generation 180 had. We're happy to take it that way. We want to make it as easy as possible, but we're always happy to get the one-offs. The one-offs are we basically built this through scrappy one-offs, seeing the news article, having the conversation, hear someone say something in a meeting and, follow up and ask Google about it. So we're always happy to have the one-offs and happy to talk about, the spreadsheets either way.
Perfect, thank you. And then a follow-up is Undaunted or are folks in this group like systematically reaching out to districts to, what's the plan for that if there is one?
I'll invite others to hop on and share. In Undaunted, we did make a list of folks that we could see, put equipment into service, for example, in that first half of 2023. We thought they were going to be a calendar year potentially filer if they're going to do this at all. And so, gosh, November 15th is the deadline. So we did make a list for ourselves and we divvied it up and said, hey, you try and reach out to those folks. We did do some of that. I've talked with, folks at WRI about helping the school bus recipients of the grants kind of understand that they can apply for the tax credits too. Happy to hear, how others are thinking about outreach, about projects they might know about or see in the world. And I guess we did some programmatic things, like Minnesota has a grant program for solar for schools. So we said, great, all these people we know are installing solar with a grant. Some of them are also eligible for a tax credit because they didn't completely pay for the project. So we did kind of a programmatic thing with the Department of Commerce and tried to get all those grant recipients, to a conversation about tax credits. So there have been a few different tactics in terms of trying to do outreach.
Thank you.
And there have been some thoughts of over time, like the first step is, is getting a project sort of, on the map and, kind of being aware of it with some backup, like a board meeting notes or, or a news article. But depending on where the project comes, the database comes from, the database might start to have a field at some point that says Gen 180 or People's Action or Resource Rural or, Center for Green Schools, NBI, like who's kind of the lead on shepherding that district or trying to keep track of, did it go into service? Are they filing? We could get to that point as a network and trying to coordinate and doing some of that work over time, but we haven't gotten there yet, although we've talked a little bit about it.
Okay, I think over to you, Jonathan.
Great. So we have come a long way as a network. I think Sky just said there are 300 projects on that map at 100 school districts. This is real. It is like funding clean energy, healthy, more efficient, schools across the country. And we think that it is worth us collectively making another big push to put this out to the field through our lists. So we want to kind of offer a call to action today that we each make a push to leverage our newsletters and our distribution lists with sort of this latest set of tools. There are one-pagers for districts. There are one-pagers for advocates. There are one-pager overviews. There are fact sheets, that have the stories of districts. There's the map. There's, tools from Undaunted and many others, on the call. And so we have tried to make this, relatively easy and quick for you. So just to kind of share my screen real quick. Let's see. I think this is the one. Are you guys seeing something that says Schools and IRA Promotional Toolkit? So the hope would be that you would come out of this call and, make it pretty easy, in your next newsletter, grab one of these headlines, grab some sample newsletter text. If you want help adapting it for your, network, you can add tools in that you want to make sure get promoted. So, sample social media hashtags, some of the latest, news media, social media tiles, it's your basic toolkit, but we're trying to make it pretty lightweight and easy for you to drop these tools into a newsletter this month at some point. And we are sure that if you do, there will be some new district that is learning about this for the first time or grokking it for the first time. And they will either find money that they can claim for an existing project, or you will help them change their mindset and activate them around making sure that future projects start to include these ideas. We are all still having conversations with district leaders who are hearing about this for the first time. I think there are 36 folks on the call. We've got 300 projects. If we all did it, right, and everybody just got one more person, we would increase. That would be like 30 more. We'd increase the number of projects on the map by 10% right there with one email push. So it could be very meaningful for this network to really mobilize and take action, and appreciate folks thinking about that this month of October 2024, which is an important month to be talking about the IRA all around the country. So I think that is, and I guess I should also say, we are also working to use the fact sheets to approach national and state media on that on this. And if that is something that you are also interested in collaborating on, follow up with us on that. We're continuing to push on that this month. Sarah, anything to add to that? Or
No.
anybody else? Any questions or comments? Any thumbs up, like, yes, we can do this? Some head nodding. Thank you. Awesome. Right on. Okay, back to you, Sarah. Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to tease a conversation now that we've teased it a few times. We'll scratch a bit more at this topic of financing. We have Bennett with us from S2 Strategies, and then this can be a future deeper conversation too. So it's this whole financing landscape. We all appreciate that grants are great. And tax credits are great. And oftentimes, those don't add up even when we can stack them. Stacking is great. Those oftentimes don't stack up to 100% of the project cost. And we still need this thing called financing. And so as I talked about earlier, one of the big parts of the IRA is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which fundamentally is a financing mechanism, right? Loans, trying to drive more dollars that people do have to repay into this system to help transition to clean energy at schools. So we have these new things called green banks that are flourishing across the country and going to get new capitalization from the GGRF. We have something called SEFIs, State Energy Financing Institutions, that are newly enabled to make loans for clean energy through partnerships with our loan programs office at IRA. So we want to just come back to kind of where are we in the financing landscape that's changing here. We can give some updates on RFIs and some of the conversations we've been having, but want to invite Bennett from S2 Strategies to come talk. They've been tracking the space and doing a lot of great work on financing and cracking that piece of the puzzle. So welcome, Bennett. Where are we on financing and green banks? What's been going on? What's the update?
Awesome. Thank you all. It's great to hear about all the inspiring work that you all are doing across the country. Like, it's really outstanding. So to give a little bit of context on S2, first of all, our firm is entirely focused on IRA implementation efforts. Part of our work is with state governments, helping to do that through the State Support Center, where we work with individual state governments to understand all of their opportunities with the IRA. And then another part of the organization that I work closely with is called our Green and Inclusive Finance Team, or GIFT, where we help kind of bring in more of these financing resources that are also made available through the IRA. I'm going to share screen very quickly just to give you some grounding in, first off, the clean energy financing tools that we really want to talk about. Elective pay or direct pay has gotten a lot of great airtime through this meeting, and I feel like everyone has a great grasp on that. That is really transformative for schools and school districts across the country. But one other key tool that we like to highlight is the State Energy Financing Institutions, or SEFIs. So the reason this is critical is the Department of Energy has this big bucket of loan authorizations called the Loan Programs Office that they can lend to clean energy projects. Traditionally, that bucket of funds has gone to innovative clean energy technologies. And so you read big headlines about, battery plants or startups getting low-cost capital through that. There is a special carve-out in the Loan Programs Office that if a state energy financing institution, or a SEFI, gives meaningful financial support to a clean energy project or an aggregation of clean energy projects, then they can also access low-cost funding through LPO to fill out up to 80% of a project's total cost. Generally, the Loan Programs Office deals in projects that are at a $100 million or above total scale, which is, very, very large, but you can get there through aggregating projects. And you can add up a lot of similar projects. Some of them can be a little bit different, but you basically can package them all together and then have one single applicant to the Loan Programs Office to go out and seek that low-cost fund. And that brings us to what is really this definition of a state energy financing institution. And it's any institution that has state dollars attached to it or a state designation as such. So for many states, this includes their state green bank, like Connecticut Green Bank in Connecticut, for example, easily counts as a SEFI. But a lot of other states have other agencies that can also be SEFIs. Some energy offices, some Department of Commerce's. States can really get creative about what agency they actually designate to be a SEFI, who can then go out and either lend to projects themselves. The SEFI can, borrow on behalf of all of those projects, or find some combination of creative financing strategies to access those LPO funds. So that's one key thread that I want folks to, keep in mind for this discussion. The second key bucket to chat about is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. You might have seen headlines about this is the $27 billion green bank that the country is trying to stand up. The goals of the GGRF are threefold. They are to fund projects that reduce emissions, support low-income communities, and leverage private capital. Up to 7x is generally the goal for leveraging private capital. And there's a lot of projects that can fall within this broader bucket of funds. And so the EPA divided it into 3 different competitions: the National Clean Investment Fund, or NCIF, the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, or CCIA, and then Solar for All. The 2 that are probably most relevant for this group and really are NCIF, the National Clean Investment Fund, and then CCIA. Solar for All is mostly residential solar focused in low-income communities. So really the first 2 are kind of the key buckets to focus on. And within the National Clean Investment Fund, or NCIF, this is where a lot of green banks and other institutions can get their initial capitalization, and they will receive the grant funds and then go out to invest in and finance clean energy projects across the country. So that's what we'll dive into next. See that there's a hand up, Carolina, if you want to jump in now before we dive into the next section.
Sorry, yes, I had a quick question. I actually think in Nevada, our Solar for All, and it might just be our green bank, I'm not sure, but they set up as part of Solar for All different councils, and one of them is for school districts and local governments, because they do foresee, I think, the community solar portion of Solar for All going to schools. So I wanted to raise that. I don't know if maybe this is unique to our state, but it sounds like we see an opportunity to get more solar and electric school buses through Solar for All in Nevada.
Sorry, yes, that is a great flag, and the Nevada Clean Energy Fund is doing a lot of really great work as well too. And so community solar is a good way for schools to plug in as well. The reason to touch on NCIF really quickly is to bring to the next point of green banks and why are these institutions relevant to what you all are working on as well. Solar for All was probably a good discussion that we should also incorporate and bring in to future discussions. That's a really great point. So really quickly to help, we have these federal financing tools, but then there is a vast network of nascent and emerging green banks around this country. Many of these green banks are set up by state governments themselves, like the Connecticut Green Bank, for instance, and others may just be independent nonprofits. And these green banks are intended to finance at a low cost clean energy projects with a pretty wide remit. And at S2 Strategies, we support the brand new GB50, which is a group of these green banks. We have a little over 40 now who have joined this group, but we hope to collectively help streamline the connections that green banks can have with groups like this as well to finance clean energy and solar across schools more broadly too. Some of the green banks will receive NCIF funds through subawardees. Many of the green banks are also the program administrators for Solar for All. And then there's open discussions about whether or not CCIA funds and how they'll plug into this as well. And as a fun fact, it's hot off the presses today, but the first GGRF project was announced today. Climate United funded a community solar project to benefit the University of Arkansas system. So very exciting news there as well. I know that was a lot thrown at you really quick, but I'll wrap up really quickly with one more piece. But so green banks, a lot of them are at varying stages. Some have lots of funds and are really excited to invest in projects all over the country already. Some are at an earlier stage, and it really varies across the country. And as I know this group has impacts all over the country, I'd recommend reaching out to the nearest green bank, and we can send you a list of all the green banks, or you can go to usgreenbanks.org to see the ones that may apply most closely to your area, and start the conversation. A lot of them would love to incorporate solar on schools and other technologies on schools and heat pumps, et cetera, into their portfolio of products that they can help offer. And then what this network really can offer is a lot of the connections and pipeline build out for and building the relationships between the green bank and schools. And I think that there's a lot of synergies that we can continue to talk through. I had saw Undaunted's next on the agenda is the responses to the great RFIs or requests for information from all these state green banks. And it's really exciting to see how this group is already getting so creative with how they can best leverage those resources. So I know that was a very quick overview. Wanted to give a little bit of quick context as the teaser for next time, but also know that we have a lot else to get to on the agenda, and I'm happy to answer any questions or open it up to further conversation. But thank you all.
Thanks, Ben. And to folks have questions, yeah, it looks like John, you want to hop on?
Hey, Bennett. Just wondering if you're in communication with Climate United. I sit on the advisory board there, and Crystal and Beth Baffert over there, they're pretty responsive. They've been really good and, kind of helping build those relationships with those lenders that are out there.
That's awesome. Yes, we chatted with their team a little bit at Climate Week as well, and that's exciting to hear, and would love to chat with you further about strengthening that connection. So thank you.
Any other hands that I'm missing for Bennett? Okay, maybe I'll take just 2 minutes and take you guys into how we've seen the CEFI concept manifest. And that's in the conversations we've been having with the Minnesota Green Bank, MNCFA, and Pennsylvania, a set of orgs there, where they're thinking about how to leverage this new CEFI structure to be the intermediary to get solar in a bunch of schools. So the state agency, would transact with LPO, agree to be responsible for shepherding 150 million. They would agree with them on, kind of the terms of what they're going to finance. We're going to do schools. We're going to just do solar. Here's kind of the box that they define. And then the state agency would work within their own state to fund solar projects on schools. That's what both Minnesota and Pennsylvania are actively speaking with LPO about, setting up those programs. Nothing yet is in the market. They are still working through a process with LPO. I think it's exciting work. It's in Minnesota. It'll be kind of transitioning from grants that they've been giving to potentially more of a financing first approach. And I think both these agencies have talked about, without putting words in their mouth, our sense is that, solar is a first technology that these groups are interested in financing, and they see that as a potential bridge to other technologies where the financing isn't, quite as well established like it is for solar. The underwriting and kind of the loan terms for solar financing is very well known at this point. So that's just 2 examples of states that we think are leading the way on leveraging this CEFI structure to fund clean energy at schools. Any questions on that? Yeah, Karen.
So one thing that I'm really interested in with all the low cost capital is whether those rates are gonna beat the triple tax-free rates that school districts get. Because like big question for GGRF, right? And so I have the same question for LPO, which is, I mean, I think I can't remember what webinar I went to where I was like, they talked about their rates and I was like, you beat triple tax-free, but do we think they are going to?
You know, I was on the phone with LPO on Friday and they said, look, like our capital, like if you can beat our capital, we've got plenty of other projects to do. So yeah, it's true. Schools have access to a very liquid, you know, and many times low cost municipal bond market. So like, why do you need other people's money? And that's, you know, that's perfectly reasonable. I think, you know, a core question that I keep coming back to is fundamentally when schools are taking on debt, there's just rules around doing that and getting voters to approve indebtedness, whether it's from the LPO, whether it's from the municipal bond market, kind of doesn't matter. But if you're going to indebt yourself, you know, there are rules around that. I think one of the things that I've heard some of these players thinking about is structuring things not as a loan, but as a, and I'm going to get over my skis here very quickly. So those of you that want to jump in and help me, Ben and others, a lease sale that's subject to appropriation. So it kind of turns it into not a capital budget item that requires indebtedness, but essentially another item on the operating budget, just like your, you know, you're kind of contracting for services for your buses or other things that are in the operating budget where you don't have to go to voters, but you can kind of take on essentially an obligation that is subject to annual appropriations. And some creditors don't like that, but motivated creditors like LPO could be, you know, fine with that kind of a structure and be subject to kind of annually folks deciding to pay this bill, right? It's a risk that the market might not like, but that these folks may be willing to swallow.
That could work from a, like, this doesn't have to get voter approved point of view. If the cost of that capital underneath it is still 8%, it's not worth doing for the school district. Like,
right.
It's, so I guess yes, I mean, I'm fascinated by LPO and I keep thinking like there is going to be a thing here, but I can't work my way to it unless I know that they can actually come in at 3%. And I don't think they can in the way they're structured now.
Well, I think the states may do some buy down. So that's the other right. The thing is what LPO terms are to the state. States can always juice that and say, sure, LPO wants 5%, but we're going to cover that 5%. And, you know, it's 0% to the districts.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's like, what are these projects? What are the return of these projects? What can they support? Right. If you're trying to do a solar project in a high cost environment like Hawaii, where power is 44 cents, like that can probably support 10% money. Yeah. Right. So it's going to depend on what kind of the projects can support too. Yeah. I'm looking at the time and realizing we've financed our way into 6 minutes before the hour. So we can talk more about this. I'm interested to hear about maybe a solar for all opportunity. We'll keep you guys posted on kind of how the Minnesota and Pennsylvania efforts with CEFI and LPO unfold. And if you do want to respond to some of these RFIs, like Bennett was saying, these green banks are kind of saying, guys, market, what should we fund? So if you have concepts about what you think these green banks in particular states should fund, you can look at these RFIs and think about responding. And I will turn it over to Sarah to do a quick last bit here on events, resources, and media.
So we want to have a regular agenda item where we are sharing across this community upcoming events that we should have on our radar, we should share with our members, resources, and media links. So these are just some starters from Undaunted that we know of. There's probably a lot more out there, so feel free, please, to add and help us populate this list. And just want to shout out our friends at Gen 180 who released their Brighter Future report since our last call. That's tagged in there and has a lot of great visuals as you're engaging others on solar. But this is our short list, and we will keep cultivating resources to share back with this group.
Maybe I'll just highlight the artifact there from Bowers Elementary. That's one of the early clean energy tax credit eligible projects in Connecticut. Their consultants did a whole analysis of the tax credits, and that report is now available, and it's sitting in a very important place, BondLink. So, this is the place where school districts are wooing investors to invest in their municipal bonds. And here's this page where they say, look at the smart thing we did. We're investing in clean energy technologies. We're getting buy downs with tax credits. We're such a smart municipality, invest in us. So some great artifacts there. And for municipal leaders who are, always thinking about how to raise the capital, how to kind of market their bonds, great artifacts here. The first that I had seen kind of make their way from clean energy tax credit land into BondLink land. If you all have seen others on BondLink, please share. These are solid gold artifacts in the world of trying to influence municipal leaders.
Great. I'll just jump in as we're closing out that if you haven't read the AP story, how this one climate fix means a school nurse sees fewer sick students from the heat. It's a great story of a St. Paul school using ground source heat pumps and direct pay. And it's the story of like a nurse. And it's a great one to share with your networks as we make this push this month about the opportunity for schools and the IRA. On those RFIs that Sarah mentioned on the green banks, just so folks know, Undaunted, we are not going to be able to respond to those other states' RFIs over the next couple weeks. So if anybody is up for that or might have bandwidth, we're happy to help you on that journey, but we are not going to be able to take the lead on doing that over the next couple of weeks. And it would be awesome if the schools community could weigh in those states around the opportunity there. And there is an example from California that we did a few months ago with California Labor for Climate Jobs when we responded to the California Green Bank's RFI around how they were going to use their GGR funds. So you'd have a good starting point if you wanted to take it on in those states. We think that we're going to have one more call before the end of the year. Not sure when that's going to be, but sometime, November, early December, something like that. We will stay in touch offline between now and then. And just another appreciation for all of the feedback from this network on the playbook for state leaders. We have made a ton of progress incorporating it all and just trying to juggle as a small team, bringing that thing out into the world. But our goal is to get it out this year. So appreciation there. It's coming soon. Team, anything else or anyone else have other quick announcements as we wrap up or updates?
I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for the time today and for the call, for your leadership. And let's make a push in October to tell the story of all of the good work and opportunity around schools and the Inflation Reduction Act. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.